Hello, and welcome back to Living the Questions podcast. Today's episode is going to be one that unfolds again. Particularly, it's going to be this way because I just recorded a couple hours ago what I thought this podcast was going to be. And it turns out that it's going to be something completely different. I went in with a couple of questions that I feel like I was sitting with. And as I was recording in the beginning, even, and towards the end, I just felt, something felt off to me. I was definitely in the conversation with myself, but then remembering that this was a podcast and that I wanted to share it and what I wanted to get up to. There was just something that I just knew by the end of the podcast it wasn't going to be the one that I shared. And that hasn't happened before. I've recorded and shared, and it's all been there. And I've really tried to edit very little, really hardly anything at all. The editing has been, just maybe like tightening up some longer pauses in like social posts, some spaces where it just helped the flow move, but didn't change at all what was being spoken or said. So really hardly any editing and, just presenting what has been shared. And this moment, after I sat with it for a little bit, I realized that it was just really, really vulnerable for me, really current for me. Just something that I feel like I want to sit with myself still a bit more before I actually open that dialogue up in this space. And while I'm very much here championing the space of living the questions in real time and living in the vulnerable spaces and sharing what this in between looks like, this is actually part of what that in between looks like. It looks like knowing when things are very vulnerable and when we can share in that vulnerability, and when sometimes we need to be a bit more maybe introspective, or maybe just have something that we're walking through in a space that feels a bit more personal to ourselves. That may mean that we bring in, a friend, family member, partner, or it's just something that we're walking through ourselves first before we even bring it externally at all. And in terms of this space, while I am definitely here to be transparent, part of that transparency is that sometimes we get to decide when we are able to share the fullness of our vulnerability. It doesn't mean that we're, hiding ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're, not open or closed off. I think that there's something here about wise discernment for ourselves. What do we need to take really good care of ourselves? When are we, how do we listen to our own internal self that shares what we're ready for, and when we need to take some time, what we're able to hold and take good care of when it comes to what we share outside of ourselves, and when we need to, maybe hold a little bit of a protective boundary around what we're still walking through, around what is maybe just like a tiny little seedling that needs that, nurturance and protectiveness because it's still in a fragile state. Um, yeah, just really paying attention to that internal dialogue because we'll feel it. It was a felt sense for me when I was finishing that episode. I just knew it. And I didn't know that this conversation I'm having right now is what that was. And I'm glad that I gave myself some hours to really sit with it and realize that this is the question I'm living into, which is, um, can I give myself space to discern when I'm, when I'm able to share vulnerability and when that vulnerability needs to be my own for a bit first, and um, maybe maybe it isn't something that gets shared here, and maybe it is something that I walk through a bit more personally. Can I discern what is, what can I give myself that space? Can I allow myself to have those beautiful boundaries around taking good care of myself and walking through the things that um, I need to walk through in the time that I need to walk them in the way that I need to walk them? And can I do it in a way where I'm still open and I can still show up here in this space in a podcast like this and know that I'm not hiding or shutting down a part of myself. I actually am taking good care in this. And who knows, what taking good care in that way allows me to then bring more here. Um, I think that part is interesting. Yeah, what is the discernment between but yeah, what is the discernment between sharing when I know I can take good care of myself and even if I'm still in the process of something and still in the experience of something that I'm in a place where um, I feel okay to share and feel like I can be in that conversation with other people. And when am I walking through tender things that need me to keep really good parameters around them, to keep them a bit closer and um, to not share. And so I think there's it's a really interesting conversation that I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm trying to find the language around uh, because I'm living into that question as we speak right now. I'm living into it, trying to figure out how to parse those pieces out, how to truly discern the difference, because I can tell that in my head I've maybe conflated before, being like closed off and or hiding something instead of sharing. And I think vulnerability is beautiful, and also, are we being wise? Are we being responsible with the vulnerability that we're sharing? I think that that's an interesting question to dive into, to not just share for the sake of sharing, to also make sure that we are taking really good care to definitely be connected in the wildness that is being a human and living this life. And really definitely the ability to be transparent about these wild in between moments, the questions that we live into, this part where we haven't arrived at an answer, that is so powerful to get to share together. And there's also this where I can recognize that there may be some questions that I personally want to navigate before I bring them here, if I'm able to bring them here or have the desire to eventually. And I think it's really beautiful because it does bring a different question forward of this is part of, this, like, how do I how do I continue to share when when I'm walking through something like that? I think it's this. I think it's part of um yeah, I think this is part of that. It gets to bring up this brand new version of the share, which is yeah, is what does it look like to remain vulnerable and in integrity? What does it mean? What does it mean to remain vulnerable and open and still be walking through some things that I'm, maybe not verbally expressing so much in words, but I also am able to express through this piece of things. What does it look like to live the questions where part of that is not shared? Where part of that is something that I I need to walk through in my own way. And in that, is there still an ability to have a shared moment? I think, yeah. I think totally. I think in this moment too, saying that out loud, I'm realizing that there may be many of you that are listening and have things where, you know, yeah, have moments where you may have felt that maybe like push of, okay, I want to be vulnerable, I want to be open, I want to share, and the potential inability to do so. And to be able to discern the difference, right, of like, what is the fear that's stopping me from doing it, which is one thing. Um, if it's fear, I think this is really cool with the discernment piece. If it's fear that's stopping us from sharing, from intimacy with another, from connection, um, from expression of ourself, our full self, from getting out of our comfort zone, maybe. Um, if it's fear, I think there's something there that's worth sitting with an extra minute to really dig into our internal wisdom and say, is this coming from fear? If it's coming from fear, you also don't have to share it, right? That you get to have your own agency and you get to decide what is best for you. And perhaps if we stay with that curiosity for a bit longer, we may realize that it's worth maybe not pushing through. Pushing through sounds like forceful. It's worth inviting ourselves into a different decision. It's worth trying something different and maybe seeing, even though it may feel scary and Bambi legged to start. I think fear is not the thing that we have to build the boundary for. I think that that actually creates walls rather than um, like a guardrail or these like gentle protective hands protecting that seedling coming through. And I think that, yeah, I think there's something there about that. So the discernment piece is fear. Um, yeah, when is it fear that might be stopping me? Also, sorry, you may be hearing my kittens. They're having a total witching hour in this moment and are very talkative all the time. So they might be a part of this podcast today. I circle back. So when can we discern whether it's fear that is that is giving us kind of this halt, and when it is our own internal wisdom or felt sense that is saying to us, we're, you know, this isn't, let's think about this, or we're not ready, um, or this isn't, like it's just saying no. I think that's it. We're circling back to conversations now that we've had at the beginning of the podcast, because they'll always weave through. It's saying no. When is our internal wise self, our intuition, our felt sense, our body communication, when is it saying no right now? just not right now. Um, and the not ready piece can be right, like that part of things. I'm not ready to share this. Um, that also can be part of that discernment that we'll probably have to be with, right? Because I can say from a fear place, I'm not ready. So can we actually be with the complexity of of trying to parse out where we are? I think the truth is we can trust ourselves at the very core if we get used to the distinction between what is a fearful no and what is a grounded no. That's the that's the discernment there. And I think when we have that more grounded no, there's something really beautiful about listening to that rewires our brain, that gives us new possibility, that allows us to feel really taken care of. And I think that's really special to create that relationship with ourselves. And that is not just a relationship we end up creating with ourselves. When we give that to ourselves, we are creating relational dynamics that we then come from. So that is going to inevitably become how we relate to other people, which is such a beautiful thing. If we're having that relationship with ourselves, what a gorgeous gift to be modeling to our own self about how we then want to relate to another. The compassion that we offer, the beauty, the space, the reverence, the trust that we want to likely give another, due to the way that we have now rewired our brain to relate to ourself and what's possible when we do. And so, yeah, I think that there that there's so much beauty there. And if we're still in the space of coming from fear, there's nothing, to be judged about that, to be, it's not like a shameful thing. It's just where we are. And can we be okay to just slowly bring self-awareness to that place of, oh yeah, I'm coming from fear. I don't know how to make a different decision right now. And that's that's okay. That's just where I am. Can I have that be okay? That's where I am, and that at some point I would like it to be different. I would like to come from a grounded place. I want to get curious maybe about how to do that, even though I don't know how to do that in this moment. Um, and yeah, and what does that look like? And then also too, if we're so brave, um, and we're coming from a fear-based place and we start to stretch that, m- most likely it's not that we would be shifting to the grounded no per se. This space of fear might actually be leading us to a yes. I'm i'm wanting to share my vulnerability. And so I think there's something really powerful about that. Can we honor our no when we need to have things be a bit more personal, and you know closer to ourselves first, um, and and then also this yes piece of, I might be a little nervous, and sharing this, being vulnerable in whatever way that might be. It might not be right in a podcast form as I'm talking about this right now. It might just really be with, you know, an intimate conversation with your partner, just outside of yourself, with with your sibling, with your kid, with anybody, with a friend, with anybody. So yeah, I think there's something there of getting to really know our yeses and nos in every way our body communicates them, and to know that, yeah, that there might be nervousness in this, and to give ourselves the grace as we learn what those feelings actually are in our body and how to listen to that, listen to those communication, those wise parts of communication that aren't words inside of ourselves. And those clues of avenues towards actual vulnerability, actual connection, actual intimacy. Um, yeah, where is that discernment piece? There's something so freeing about this as I talk about it. Like, this is such a different felt sense than when I recorded that first episode. Yeah, this feels like, oh, like I feel in my body just like openness. I feel a flow in the conversation that I'm sharing. It feels like I what I want to be sharing right now. It feels like what I need to be sharing right now. It feels like a permission slip for myself that was missing in the other thing that I had recorded before. What I recorded before was totally beautiful and fine. And truly, it was just, it was a brand new question that I was sitting with, and it just wasn't right. This feels like what I'm actually living into. It's not that question that I'm living into. That's just something I wrote down that I definitely wanted to explore and did, and I'm still living into in its own way. But what actually came up through that is the real question that I feel like I'm overarchingly living into, which is, yeah, which is what brings me here to this podcast, which is what started this podcast to begin with. Can I, can I share, my voice? Can I let it unfold? And part of that was, was fear of, yeah, how to show up, how to quote unquote do it right, whatever that means. All those fears of, like the things of like, will I mess things up? Will I know what to say? Will I have the quote unquote right things to share? Um will I make any sense to anyone? Will anyone listen to this? I don't know, I think there's all of those natural things that come up. And I think what's really cool about this being the penultimate episode of the first season, um, which is wild. I can't believe our final episode is next week. What happened to time? And my oh my, such goodness has been in this time period. I'm so, so grateful. But I will talk about that next week. Um, yeah, it's really cool to me that this episode ended up becoming and is currently um, yeah, talking about these pieces of of the nuance of being brave with our voice and the nuance of what vulnerability is. Vulnerability, I don't believe, is just, you know, sharing all the things at any given time and being totally open and unprotected. I think, you know, we can overly protect, we can be really rigid with our boundaries. And also, we don't have to have boundaries be this rigid, all or nothing thing. And I think that there's something here that's playing, and then the nuance of that protected doesn't have to mean closed. And yeah, and like this, as I keep, like protecting my parts, it actually, protective can be really beautiful, it can be really wise, it can be really self-honoring and relationally honoring. I think it can really help us to be, yeah, even more, yeah, even more deeply connected to one another, to ourselves and who we are, and how we want to relate to another. I think there's such good there's such fun lessons in this space. My words, my goodness, they're here, I swear. That it's just this feels fun to me. There's something really juicy within this that I'm finding myself living into as I talk about this right now. And I'm excited to just be here in this moment because this is happening in real time. This is vulnerable for me. This is me discovering in real time that I definitely, yeah, I definitely have conflated things before that made it tricky to discern what um what to share and what not to share. And sometimes at the expense of my own self, sharing more than I was really ready to, and or in spaces that weren't going to take good care of the things that I was walking through. And I had to learn that. And it doesn't mean that I need to close myself off. It's not a hard pendulum swing, although sometimes that is how we learn. Um, it's more of a, oh, I learned that there, and here's how I can take good care moving forward. Um, yeah, it's not being fully wide open and not thoughtful about how we need to still take good care and protect ourselves. And it's also not being so closed off and overly protected. It's wise protection. It's sort of like, firmly but loosely held, movable protective barriers. um to me, I keep coming back to that thought of a riverbed. I think is always such a beautiful description to me of a supportive structure. To me, that feels like the kind of protection that I'm referring to, which is that um, it holds the shape of, the river. It holds the shape of the water that's flowing through. Without it, the water would be everywhere. And with it, it allows the water to move to the destination of the ocean. And they inherently are helping each other out and also influencing each other. So while the riverbed guides, the water also is carving out that pathway. It is, you know, changing the structure at all times of what the riverbed is. And so the riverbed is also movable and changes and is and holds and yet allows for natural change, natural transition and shaping and evolution of what it looks like and how it is shaped. And to me, I feel like that's what I feel like I'm living into with this vulnerability question here. It's how can I have that riverbed where I'm held supportively and taking really good care and still open and still expressive and still myself, yeah, without feeling like I need to open it all and without feeling like I'm then closed off. If I'm not sharing everything, then I'm closed off is not the actual equation. That is the pendulum swing. And what does it look like to both be open and tend well to ourselves? And I think that there's something really beautiful about realizing in this moment just how freeing that is and just how beautiful that is and just how loving that is for not only myself but as an invitation to you, to those around me. So whoo, that was a really fun, unexpected turn. I didn't know that the episode would go this way, and I'm really grateful that it did. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm so excited to continue to live into this. And now I'm so curious what these things that I'm getting to, keep close and tend to and live into. And write about, are they, what are those things for me and what do I want to do with those? And also to thank them for inspiring me to get more curious with what is the question I'm actually living into here. And um yeah, and to actually step into and live into it and talk about it here. I'm very grateful for the path that took, and thank you for joining me on that journey. I would be so curious to hear what your experience with discerning vulnerability in your life and your relationship to it is, and how it's unfolded, and maybe where you stand with it right now. Yeah, what does that look like for you in your life? And what, in this conversation that we've just shared, what did this bring up for you? And what are you continuing to be curious about? What did it spark for you, or yeah, invite you into? I'm so interested. So definitely let me know in the comments, or feel free to email over. And I again cannot believe our next episode is the last of season 1. So I will see you there for that one, which will be full of reflection of what we got up to in the season, just how far we've come in the short amount of time, and the through line of it all. I am really excited to welcome summer with you. The episode will not fall next week. The episode will not fall on a Thursday, as it typically does. I typically air on Thursdays, but our final episode would fall on Juneteenth. And to honor that day, I am going to have the episode air on the 20th, so the day after. So it will air on a Friday for the first time, and really creating space for that day to be beautiful and on its own. And I look forward to seeing you next week for the final episode of season 1, as we transition into beautiful summer solstice energy and spaciousness, inviting the beauty of that, a season of spaciousness ahead, before we come on back for season 2 in the fall. What? That's wild. Anywho, thank you so much for being here. And I'm grateful and honored to get to speak into your ears and heart and life. It is a deep, deep, deep honor. And I can't wait to meet you next week.